Scared her off already. Okay, so welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Week 3. Oh my goodness, this is going so fast. And today we're talking about how to be aware when there's triggers going on around us, when we're interacting with others socially, and how do we handle that? So we'll be dealing with that. The first thing we want to do, though, is to go into our hearts and do the heart-brain coherence. So let's just do that for a moment. Let's take that breath in. This is one of the best tools that you can use for handling your emotions, for calming down your energy. If there's something going on like high blood pressure or anxiety, heart palpitations, this is one of the best things that you can just reach in your toolkit and say, oh, I know how to do this, right? We've been doing it for almost 5 years, more or less, 4.5 years. So the steps: touch your heart center, slow down your breathing, and exhale slowly. I'm just going to keep repeating that. And what's happening is your heart fires neurons just like your brain does. And so it starts communicating with the brain. And the heart is full of love and compassion. So it starts changing the way the brain is reacting and responding. It changes the cells in our body to be more compassionate, to repair themselves and say, I got this, and act more confidently. And then when you add in that ingredient of love and compassion, joy, it's just a miraculous event that happens because your whole body calms down, comes to a place of peace, and you're able to deal with whatever it is that you've got in front of you. How's that feel? Anybody feel more calm? And the other thing, the other benefit of doing the heart-brain coherence is you retain what you hear. So if you're learning something in a class setting, or you're trying to understand something more fully, if you do the heart brain, it puts your brain in a higher brain state. And then you're able to see it more clearly. You're able to say, oh, that's what they're talking about. And you're able to remember it when it comes up later. When I first learned about the heart brain coherence, it was through a training by Greg Braden. And Greg actually had us pair up and we had to tell a story to the other person. And we had to talk, I believe it was 2 minutes. We talked and shared something that was personal, something that had meaning. And then we listened because that other person, our partner, had to repeat it back to us, not verbatim, but tell us what we had just said to them. Well, I want you to know that was probably 6 years ago now that I did that. I can still remember what that person told me to this day. I might not know every word that was said, but I know the exact gist of that conversation and that story that was told to me. So it works. And I can really attest to the fact that it does help you to remember, to retain. And, some of us are getting a little older, and I'm talking about myself. So we pay attention now to what can I do to remember things more fully. And one of the things we want to remember is if we're learning a new skill, or if we're learning about something like communication and emotional empowerment, how can I remember what to do? Yeah, I know Terry told me something, but what was that? So when we're doing the heart brain as a warm up before class, this will help you to retain that information. In addition to me sending you the recordings, of course. Okay, so I do have a presentation. Let's see if I can get this up for you. And well, we did the heart brain already. All right, why are you not flipping? There you are. And this is week 3, the social awareness of others' emotions. To me, this is a really important lesson. And I spent some time really thinking on this lesson about times that I have been in a social situation and not aware that other people were being triggered either by me or by somebody else. And then there were the times when I was very aware that other people were being triggered. So we're going to look at what our role is when others are triggered, because everybody has things, right? We've been learning about that, the self-awareness and how we can know when we're being triggered. So everybody has something from their experiences that they're going to just go right to that button, right to when something triggered, something was not pleasant. And you know what? Some people are going to be very unhappy with me because I think I forgot to hit the record button.
Uh-oh.
Let me see if I can do that while I've got this.
It says it's recording.
Oh, it is
Mary.
recording. Oh,
Yeah.
we'll see. I forgot that I did it.
Click OK.
Don't do as I do as I say. Okay, we're all good. Thank you for pointing that out, Ricky. All right, so triggering. I don't even like that word, but that's the word that, it just really does describe what happens when either I'm triggered or you're triggered or we're all triggered. And then what do we do when all of us and people in the room or people in the world are being triggered? So the important thing to look at is, what stories are you telling? Because maybe they're not as triggered as you think they are. Maybe you're the one triggered and you're like, well, this is very upsetting. Why, and looking at people and making judgments or criticisms or having your own bias about what's going on with that story, making assumptions, making judgments. We all know what happens when we do that, right? So the things that trigger me and the things that trigger you and the things that trigger us, that's what we're talking about today. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of those things? What are some things that trigger me, you, us? Sometimes it seems like the whole world. So what do you think? What's some triggering things?
I get triggered when I feel like I'm disrespected, like I'm talking and someone starts a different conversation like I'm not there, or just keeps going and is not considerate of me having any worth or any opinion.
Okay, thank you, Linda. And I totally agree. It's not a happy moment when that happens.
Yeah. You don't have to respect the opinion, but you have to respect the person.
Right.
I think a lot of people these days are triggered because somehow, some way, they got us feeling like we're dumb. That people aren't smart. That I know it has a lot to do with our country, to be honest with you, I think. Because we get called like we're dumb a lot. And I hate that, so I know it triggers me. And I think it triggers a lot of people.
Can you give an example, Jean? I mean, I have one in my head, but I just want to hear if there's something that you're thinking.
Well, I haven't wanted to talk about the election or anything, but I think on one side, we were kind of told that we were dumb just because that's his feel, you know. And then on the other side, now that the election is over, a lot of people are dumbing down their fellow patriots and stuff for the decision that they made. And I don't think any of that's necessary. You know, first of all, we should all realize that we're smart. We were created in the image of the divine, and so I don't know, it just bothers me when people say that. Even if I don't agree with that person, I don't want that person thinking that he's dumb. He did what he thought was right.
Okay. So I'm hearing one thing that bothers you is disrespect.
Well, actually, that's what Linda said too.
Exactly. It comes down to that same
Exactly.
thing, disrespect, not honoring that we all have our opinions, our experiences, what we think and feel is right for us, right? So,
Well,
yeah.
that's what I think on on a national level or a universal level. I think that for me, what triggers me more than anything else is unkindness.
Yes. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah,
Can
brought up politics, and that is an extreme trigger for so many people. And I know I intentionally stayed away from talking about it on social media because it just gets into this huge me against you type of event. And that's not helping any situation when we can't come together in unity. So, and it's funny because I was doing a very benign live event, and somebody in the audience kept saying, "Who are you voting for? Who are you voting for? Are you this or you that?" I'm not here to talk politics. I'm talking about something totally different. And people kept trying to bring the politics into it. It's so triggering and so stressful that that's why I don't hold those type of conversations. And yeah, so it's something for us to be aware of. And we're going to talk about that, some of the things that we can be more aware of. We're holding social conversations and what could be a triggering event for others in our midst.
adding on to what Jean said, the country, I feel the country's divided, but one side assumes if you're one political party, that they know you already, that all Republicans are alike or all Democrats are alike, and they don't listen to you as a single voice. They assume that they already know what you're going to say and how you feel.
Yeah, the generalization.
That's
right?
a disrespect as well.
Yeah, it's a generalization, it's a judgment.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that happens in racism. You know, just because you're a different color, you must think like everybody else that's that color, you know, or have the same traits or the same characteristics. And that generalization, going back to the original, Linda, it's disrespectful. That's what we react to, is that disrespect. Anybody else? What's some triggering things?
I've definitely triggered some people by using certain titles. Like my neighbors were outside, my neighbor and her mom, and I said, "Hey, ladies," and her mom's like, "Who you calling lady?"
Oh
Tammy's
my
like,
goodness.
"Be nice, mom. Brooke's a nice person." But yeah. And then I'd say I get triggered when my intentions are misinterpreted. That's like huge.
Yes,
Happens.
very huge. Jim, anything to add? Oh, and you're muted.
Nothing to add at all. I'm right with y'all.
All right. Well, we talked for the last 2 weeks about triggering, and one of the things, the very first step in the acknowledging and the awareness is to name that you're triggered. Just to say, I'm triggered. But how do you know? How do you know when you're triggered?
Well, I think the first thing I notice is going immediately into judgments about the situation, about the person, whatever, just like responding in kind in my head, and just through time and studying and thinking about these things, I'm noticing dropping into judgment a lot sooner. Um, but yeah, I think that's the first thing that will point it out to me is, oh God, I'm being so judgy. Stop. What's going on here?
Going on? Yeah. I think for me, that's the awareness too, Jim. It's like somebody will say something or something will come up, and all of a sudden my brain just kind of runs away and says, hey, da, 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 and goes into the judgment or the criticism. And so that's one of the immediate responses. And how you can tell if you're being triggered is if you're all of a sudden, you're not your sweet, smiley, gentle self, like attack self. Like let me deal with this right now. Let me attack
Yeah,
that and set you straight, right? Because of course,
Yeah.
person, I know how you should act and how you should behave and think.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's that reaction that comes up.
And right.
Yeah. What about the physical body? I think we talked about that in one of the lessons. What happens to us physically when we're triggered?
Oh, well, tension, right. Right off the bat. Um, yeah, maybe, my
Yeah.
certainly certain body language must ensue, but all right,
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
getting that fight posture.
Yeah. That's one of the things that, remember, we talked about the amygdala, that part of our brain. And one of the things that will happen is fight or flight. So we either go into that, I'm going to set you straight. I'm going to straighten you out, mister.
Mhm.
We're like just totally go into our cave, and it's like, I can't deal with that. And I've even said that before. I can't deal with that right now. So we run from it. We hide. We're like, nope, just going to put that barrier up. I don't hear you, la, 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 la. And so those are the two extremes that we might notice when we're triggered is either we're going to fight for what we believe and how we think and we feel, or we're going to just let me just give myself a pause here, which is actually a good thing to put yourself in timeout instead of being the aggressor. I
Yep.
think, Jean, did you start to say something? I think I might have interrupted.
Who, me?
I thought I heard somebody start to say something when I,
No, but I do. I wouldn't mind saying something. I have this problem that I've always had where if something goes wrong and there's a trigger, I tend to blame myself. What did I do now? What did I say? And it's taken me a long time to realize that a lot of times it's just not me. It's somebody else, but I don't get triggered too much anymore. Your pause has really helped there,
it's
you
a
know.
tremendous tool to get more familiar
Mm.
with, get in the habit of using. But I think, Jean, I think that tendency to say, and I know I'm not picking on you, but just to say, I'm sorry, that's when you're going in and saying, what did I do? Right. I must have done something to make you upset. I did something to trigger you. And so there's that tendency to start apologizing.
Well,
And
you know, I'm the I sorry girl, so.
I know you are, and I know you owe me a lot of money for those sorries. We're gonna have to start using cryptocurrency, I think, because that's a lot more expensive
Oh,
than a dollar.
just a way to take our money, I think. I don't know.
Okay, so we talked about judging, criticizing. That could be one way we know that we're triggered is when we go into that mode. The physical, like the tightness in the stomach, the sometimes nauseousness when we're triggered, like, oh boy, something's going on here. So there's a problem that I have to deal with. Escaping. Escaping is different than the pause button, hitting the pause to give yourself that time to process. Escaping is like, I'm just going to think about that movie I watched last night. I'm going to create a fantasy right now. I'm going to daydream some. It's like you're not at the point of hearing it. So your body does this thing and your mind does this thing of taking you out of the situation. So it's different than a conscious, I'm going to hit the pause button. Can you see the difference? You're in control when you're hitting the pause button. You're saying, okay, I need time to process this. So I'm going to step away. The other is like this automatic thing that happens where you just go away and you're not consciously doing that. It's a response that your body has learned. It's a habit and it's just tuning out, right? You're just tuning out that person that's talking. So, or whatever situation is going on. So difficulty paying attention, disassociating yourself from whatever that is that's happening, that's triggering you, feeling exhausted, like all of a sudden, I'm just so tired, I'm just going to go lay down, right? So that is a defense mechanism. And these all happen through the way we've dealt with things throughout our life. It's a learned response, which develops into a habit. And the more we're aware that that's what we do, then we can consciously take control. Like, oh, I'm getting ready to flee from this, so I want to go ahead and hit the pause button before I just zone out and don't know what I'm doing or how I'm going to handle this situation. Defensiveness. I think, Jim, did you mention that? Getting defensive about what somebody's saying and or the situation even and rising up, and that's when your blood pressure starts to rise and you feel yourself just getting ready for battle. In other words, you get very defensive and you start to justify. You're justifying how you feel about something and your thoughts are running and they're doing this big thing of, I've got all the answers here. I know how to do this, right? I know how to present this. The other way you can tell if you're triggered is you keep thinking about it. Can anybody relate to that? It's like something happens, either you've hit the pause button or you've ran away from it or you engaged, but you can't let it go. You can't do that last thing that we talked about, which is to just drop it, let it go, let it be done. It comes back up and it comes back up, and maybe you even dream about it, and you keep processing it. I was in a relationship, my last marriage that I was in, and 3 days after we'd had an argument, all of a sudden here was this conversation about something I thought was already resolved. But nope, it's like here it is again, because he'd just been thinking about it and what's the word, ruminating over it, and just keeping it fresh instead of really working through it. And working through it, we're going to talk about relationships next week. and emotional empowerment in a personal relationship. Relationship can be ethnic relationship, family, friends, whatever that is. But if there's that person, or if you're that person that just can't let it go and it just keeps coming up and keeps coming up and something's bothering you, that's a time to really go inside and say, why? Why is that bothering me so much? And there may be something that you've totally blocked out from your early years. That is the underlying thing. Remember the elevator? Anybody remember the elevator shaft? That could be in the basement and you don't even realize it. And so all of a sudden, you just are trying, your brain is trying to get you to that point of saying, that's what it's all about. It wasn't a triggering event at all, but yet I'm obsessing over the conversation that was had or the fight or whatever it was. So obsessing over it, keeping it at the forefront, maybe even after the person you had the argument with is already way down the road, but you're still like, nope, this isn't resolved yet. This one, the last one that I want to cover about recognizing when you're triggered, it's going into habits. It's like that person that is recovering from alcohol or drug abuse, and they're triggered. And sometimes a trigger can happen just so out of the blue. And there they are with a cigarette in their hand or, the drink in their hand. And it's going back to what they had used to escape to begin with, those habits and the self-soothing and whatever it was that became a habit to begin with. So just want to check in. Did all of that, what I'm just went over, does that make sense? Is there a question? Is there a comment? Anything that you want to add, how you can tell that you are triggered and what you might be observing in others around you, and you see that they're triggered. Is this a way to identify, oh, that person, I don't usually see them smoke, but there they are smoking. Maybe there was something that happened that was very emotional for them that they couldn't deal with. And so they went to a habit, or they escaped and all of a sudden they're in their bedroom laying down. It's like, what happened? So just opening it up to see what your thoughts and comments are about it.
I have a comment about the other side, dealing with this. If you're the narcissist, they know how to trigger you and they get you going. And if you go into a defense mode, that gives them, they see that as giving them a green light just to pursue it. And meanwhile, they're back in the steamroller out of the garage and you're toast. And they learn your habits and your reactions and your triggers and use it against you. And meanwhile, you're saying 3 days later, like I'm still like huffing and puffing. Why do you do this? And why do you do that? And they're moving on with their agenda.
Mhm.
And you're not putting up a good fight or a good argument. Not that you have to, but it's all strategy. And I'm still muddled, and that my thing was eating, and I'd be eating for 3 days and muddled, and they're moving ahead, and my problem was nothing got resolved because I wasn't clear-headed enough to even know what I wanted or to say what I wanted. So the triggers have purposes for them, as well as us learning how to deal with them and what they are and defend them. So I'm glad you brought all this up because it kind of clarifies it for me that, that person isn't here, but there's other people that are still here, and it's amazing to see their mind works and how they want to get you going, and they know what bothers you, and I get mad at myself for getting sucked in or reacting or then it's another tier of reactions and emotions.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing that in.
Thank you, Linda. And yeah, very appreciated because I do understand. I've been in the gaslighting situation, and that is very much something that someone who feels that need to control another
Mhm.
person, they do understand on a
Yeah, they
kind
know
of-
what they're doing.
they know exactly what they're doing. Yeah, but your part is to learn how to control your own emotions. That's the emotional empowerment
Right.
where, okay, I feel myself getting triggered. I feel that little nudge in my stomach that says something's not good here. That's the point where you can start with the controlled breathing,
Mhm.
right? Do the heart brain. Um, say, what's in my toolkit? What are the things I learned
Mhm.
about to deal with this person that their agenda is to control? That is their entire agenda. But I am the one that has the power to allow them to control me or not. And that's what this breaks down to.
Mhm.
Taking your power back, becoming so emotionally empowered that the most brilliant narcissist in the world would not be able to shake you and to get you to be triggered.
Yeah. I know this is off subject, but I always wondered, how did they all have the same playbook? How did they know all these techniques? Does it
Years
come
of practice.
I guess, or does it come natural? I mean, there's so many commonalities.
I know there are. I believe that
Is it
we
a
all learned that from 0 to 7, we're so impressionable and we're really getting to understand what being a human's about, right? Our humanity and how we interact with others and what gets attention, what doesn't get attention. How do I control when so little I don't have any control, but what is it that I can use to get what I want? And so there are those that learn, this is what gets
Yeah.
controlled. What gets
Can
me
I just build on that? Because I feel like you're talking about Max and I's relationship with your whole narcissist relationship. And it's so similar. I mean, he wants to have his power in whatever way that is and not letting me get a diaper on him or pants, or we're trying to leave and now it's the most fun game for him to just run away from me if I have his shoes or his coat. And then it turns into like me kind of forcefully putting the jacket on him, which is this like game, but then he's like laughing and crying, and I'm like, what the heck? So I've just been like, okay, you don't want to go? Fine. Like, I just leave him alone, and I'm glad that we don't have any super tight schedules at the moment that I'm just like, well, maybe we won't go or we'll be late or whatever until you come to me and want to put your jacket on. Like,
I,
yeah, but
I'd like to say to Brooke, my older son was exactly that way. Our life was a power struggle. And then one day I said,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if you can do that. Maybe I should help you. And then they want to show you they can do it and they stop fighting and it changes their mind. So try that if that worked with me.
yeah,
Like a
yeah,
challenge rather than
right.
a challenge of I'm going to get my way and you're going to get your way. It's a challenge of well, let's see. Are you old enough to do that by yourself yet? Or I mean, not insulting, but in a good
Mhm.
way.
Yeah, true. And he loves doing his own thing and being so empowered.
Yeah.
Like it feels so similar in the sense of me being so responsible for my reaction to his
Mhm.
prodding and poking and like pulling my triggers. Because if I get a little fired up, then he really feeds on that and
Yeah. Yeah.
it'll
Of
just
course.
like
That's what we're
escalate, you know?
saying. Yeah, that's when they learn that, oh, I've got control here, right? Because
Yep.
you reacted
So
quickly, that got that attention, or that it's like, oh, I got her that time, you know.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because they have to learn consequences. And so maybe the consequences, oh, we're not going to the park today then, you know,
Mhm.
oh, back up, okay, we're done.
It's what it's kind of become. He'll say bye, and then I'll say bye, and then I walk towards the door, and then he comes running like, "Oh no, I'm coming too!" And then he wants to
Yeah.
join in.
Even our animals learn this. Even the animals learn consequences. I had little Magi out today playing ball with her, and all of a sudden something distracted her, and she's put the ball down, and she's like interested in something else. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going inside then. Bye, we're done. And then it was like, what do you mean you're not going to play with me anymore? So they react just like kids do.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I always, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
He always wanted to make the choices. So my motto was give him two choices that I can live with.
Mm.
So he gets to make
Yeah.
a choice and I win.
Right on. Yep. Yep,
So
we've been
just-
doing that. Great
I just,
advice.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
Brookie
the
was
importance of
talking
that
about-
pause comes up to me, like the how we deal with it
Mhm.
is just noticing, because if I don't notice right away, then that cortisol thing, I mean, that will just build and build and it stays elevated. So then if he like tries to come at me again within the next like 5-10 minutes, like I have to still just remain calm, keep breathing. Only love for the little guy.
Only
Little
love.
sister.
Lots of love.
I think Jean had a comment, and then we're going to move on.
Yes.
I was just going to say that when Brookie was talking, it sounded just like me and the dogs. Like you're ready to go for a walk, and oh, I don't want to get my harness on. So they go and they lay in their bed and roll over where you can't get it on. And you say, okay, I guess you don't want to go. I'll go by myself. I'll just put it to the side. And then they, well, I wanted to go. I just wanted you to play with me and get it on me. And yeah, they're like that.
Right.
Yeah, learning what
know,
they are, and I think, who was it that asked? Did they learn this to be a narcissist? And I think that was
Oh
you, Linda.
yeah, Linda.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and that's really where it comes from. It's like learning, how do I control another person? And that's what the narcissism is, but it's expanded out and really multiplied beyond that. Oh, I'm not going to go, I'm going to play this game with you right now and make you upset or angry or whatever the reaction is they get. And then as life goes on, they test it more. They test it with their peers. They test it with teachers. Some of you are ex-teachers in here, so you know what I'm talking about.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Can
wow.
Can I ask something? Sometimes I feel like a whoosh. It's gotten to where I don't even know how to explain this. I look at myself when things happen. Sometimes I think that I trigger myself. It's not that the other person has triggered me. I've triggered myself because of all the junk I have in my background and what I've been carrying around. And of course, the person who's talking to me has no idea. He wasn't there. He didn't see all the things didn't see all the things I went through. So they say something, they have no idea that it's going to trigger me. So I have to be careful with that too.
So let's change that around. It's not that you have to be careful. It's being more self-aware, Jean. And if something does come up, I mean, that person, like you said, may not have any idea at all of what you've been through. It's not on them, it's on you to say, why did that bother me so much? Why was I so triggered by that? And go down that elevator shaft, do the homework that you got from last week was, okay, what triggered me? And then go down the list of, the
Mhm.
different steps. Okay, what was that feeling? And eventually get to the bottom of, oh, that's where it all started. Everything that we're triggered by had a starting point,
Mhm.
and it could have been at any point in your life, could have been anywhere on your timeline. But until you do the work and you dig in there and you dive deeper, that's why this is a deeper dive, that's when you're going to discover, oh, that's what happened. And it's not so important. Well, it is important to discover what happened. The important thing is, are you able then to forgive? Are you able to say, okay, let me look at this. Let me sit with this for a minute. Because some things are so deep and hurt so bad that we're not able to just because we found what it was, we're not able to just say, oh, okay, now I'm done, right? That's just the beginning. Now you can do the real power work of saying, okay, this may come up for me in my life again. Let me deal with it now. No procrastination. Let me look at it. Let me write about it, talk about it to somebody that will really understand and listen. Let me pray about it. Let me talk to God about it. Let me do the forgiveness work. And forgiveness, remember, is not about anybody else but you. And when you can forgive a situation, words, an event, something that somebody did, that frees you. That's the freeing part. So that now, when somebody has a discussion and it's something that was very, very deep for you, it may not have that same impact once you've looked at it and sat with it. Then the triggering is going to eventually get easier and easier on you as it happens until you get to the point of, oh, yeah, I remember I used to get very upset when somebody would talk about corporal punishment or whatever it is that was the trigger. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking that somebody else is doing something to make us upset or angry, we're pointing a finger at them. And yes, we've talked about the narcissist personality, and there are people that intentionally try to push those buttons, but there are other people who may just be having a conversation, and then that comes up for you. So something.
I was also thinking, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was also thinking that everyone in, at least in this group, I know would have been upset. It's the way I was. I took it personally, and it really wasn't a personal thing. What happened is they were giving me a party because I was leaving town. I was living in Nebraska, and we were moving to Colorado. And they gave me this party. It was really nice and everything. The friends I had there. And then someone said, well, you need us to help you find a place to live where you're moving. I said, no, I think I'll be okay. No, because you don't want to move by those people. And I said, those people? What people? And she said, you know, the Mexicans.
Oh,
Oh boy.
And I said, well, I don't think that would bother me because I'm Mexican. My
Mhm.
mother is Mexican.
Wow.
And they all went, woo.
Wow.
But I realize now that wouldn't just upset me. That would upset all of you because saying something like that about a group of people is very wrong.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know. And the funny thing about it is I didn't make a big issue of it. You know, I did say what I said, and most of them never talked to me again. I'm the one who was insulted, but most of them just never talk to me.
Right.
You're better off without them.
Yeah. Yeah, they were doing you a favor. Okay, so we talked about triggering how and recognizing in ourselves how we're triggered, but how do we see it when we're in a social situation? Oops, who'd we lose?
Jim.
Lost Jim. Well, let's hope that he
Aw.
gets in here. I hope he can get back in. Well, he'll have the recording anyway.
Probably their internets.
Yeah. All right, so I spy a trigger. How do we know if somebody's got something going on when it just seems like a benign conversation, right? Kind of like what you were saying, Jean. You know, they didn't know, or
They
maybe
should have known for being a good person.
the conversation was a triggering conversation
It
because
was.
it involved racism, criticism, judgments, right? But
Mhm.
okay, so how do we know? Because maybe there's an emotional outburst. You know, you're having this wonderful party and you're having a conversation, and all of a sudden, let me let Jim back in. Um, all of a sudden, there's like somebody that's cussing everybody out and rushing out of the room. So maybe something triggered that person, right? So what probably happened was, you know, they got defensive. There was criticism going on, judgment going on. Jean, your situation, you know, where they were judging and criticizing, but you didn't do the emotional outburst. You did more of the. It sounds like you did more of the going into my cave. Let me just escape. Right. Let me protect myself right now by just removing myself from that. You can spy a trigger in someone if there's expressions of intense judgment with an agitated or tight tone of voice. And many times you might not even hear what they're saying because, you know, a lot of people, if they're responding or to a trigger, or they're responding in a way of aggression, they might say it kind of like under their breath, but they say it out loud. So if you're close enough, you might hear what they say. Anybody ever experienced that? It's like, what did you say? You know? So there could be that that all of a sudden their whole energy of their body has changed. And you can say, oh, something's going on with that person, right? I spy a trigger there. And a lot of times sarcasm is used when that's the case. Argumentative. Let me just tell you what's right, right? I got the answers and you're wrong. So having to set everybody straight on something. Personal attacks, blaming, accusations. So this is something that can happen if somebody's triggered, you know, just going on the attack. And that happens a lot. That's one of the biggest ways you can see if somebody's triggered is all of a sudden they're that tiger, you know, I'm going to pounce on you. Expressions of feeling victimized or powerless. Now, not everybody is emotionally aware enough to know that I can let you know that you triggered me, right? And Jean, I'll go back to you again. You know, you weren't able to express to them, hey, you know, that what you said really upset me. And this is why, you know. So letting them know. Nonverbal cues. So when you see somebody, maybe their face is starting to get red and they look like they're about to explode, or they just start kind of withdrawing from the crowd or withdrawing from the conversation that's taking place, you can pretty much tell that there's something inside of them that's going on where they were triggered. And that goes into the next one as well, the withdrawal, avoidance, that tendency to flee from the situation. And that all goes back to, again, our youth, our younger years growing up, where we learn how to deal with things. You know, either we're going to stay and fight about it, or try to present our case of knowing that what's right and what's wrong, or we're going to just say, no, the heck with this, I'm out of here, and just flee from it. So these are how we can recognize that somebody in our immediate vicinity is responding to something. And it may not be an overt response. It may be that, oh, I need to pay attention to what's happening here because I feel, I mean, I think we're all empaths. I'm pretty sure everybody here is an empath, and you can read other people's energy. And so you see that there's something going on, right? Yeah. So is that making sense? This little chart that I did? Okay. All right. So I have another protective way that we can protect ourselves against triggering, because it's going to happen. As I said, we've had experiences, we've had things that, you know, we haven't dealt with everything in our life through our experiences. So how can we protect ourselves? This is a method that is fairly new to me. I've used it some, but sometimes I forget that I actually have this protection. So I want to share it with you, and we're going to do a little exercise. So just envision that trigger, that somebody has said something. Maybe I said something and you didn't let me know, or let all of us know, but there was something that was said, or it triggered a memory of something. And you started to get that feeling, right? That feeling inside, and you're like withdrawing a little bit. So what you can do instead of the withdrawing, I want you to imagine that you are a wire mesh screen, like a screen door or the screens that you put on your window. There's little places in there that have like little holes where air can escape through, while energy can escape through. So you imagine that your whole body is this mesh screen. So let's actually do this. So bring to mind something that you know is a triggering event for you, or maybe a word or a situation. You know, we mentioned several things earlier of what might trigger us. So just bring to mind something. And the next time that comes up for you, just envision right now that that's coming up and it's going through those holes, and it's going to just float away from you because you are this mesh, and nothing is going to come and stick inside of you, inside of your mind, inside of your body. It's just going to flow like the wind and go all through you, and none of it sticking, none of that emotion, the response, the anger, the shame. It's just going to float. So just envision that right now. See yourself, actually see yourself with those little holes, the little pinholes from the screen. And that triggering event is flowing just like the wind, going through the holes, but it's not sticking. And then you're just left with yourself still intact. None of that has stuck. None of it is heavy in your energy field. And you're allowing that person or that event to have happened, because we can't change things that happen in our world. We can change our reaction. Have in our toolkit that when something comes up, and it's not about being passive about what happened, it's just a way of learning to have control over picking your battles. Was this an important battle for me to get into in that moment? And then that gives you time to later on, if you want to revisit it, if you want to say, oh, okay, that happened, let me process it now. It's a way of giving you that moment instead of immediately going on the aggression or retreating from it. You're not retreating. You're just allowing that person to do what they're doing. You're not giving them any power at all. Zero power to that person. And it's not going to affect you. So I love this. And whenever something comes up, this is a great way to just say, oh, right now I'm a screen door. Right now that's just flowing away. I'm not giving it any attention at all. I'm not dealing with it, but I'm not ignoring it either. I'm just allowing it to flow. I'm letting the energy flow. And what you'll find when doing this, what I have found in using it, is there's a shift in the energy. And I don't like using win and lose, but that person might envision that they won the battle, right? They blasted and you didn't even respond. Like, what the heck? You know, I guess I won that battle because they didn't have anything to say about it. But in reality, there's no winners or losers. There just is. And so their state of being, there's going to be a shift. And, you know, maybe next time, after you have time to process what that triggering event was and go down the elevator shaft to what it's really about, maybe next time you'll be empowered to say, let's talk about this. I'm not comfortable with what you just said. Can we talk about this? Can we hold conversation? And then deal with it that way. But in that initial state, you want to just let the energy flow and not take it on. Does this make sense? Were you able to see yourself as a queen? Yeah, I really like this one. It's one that I want to use more and more because, you know, it just seems there's been a lot of triggering things that have happened in our world, and we need to learn some ways to deal with that. So meshing is a really good way for that initial, when you're being triggered, to just say, okay, let me just let it fly by, and then I can come back and revisit it later when I have time to really delve into it. Okay, so let's move then to, wait, I skipped one. What can I do when others are triggered? So we've figured out that we can identify when somebody is being triggered. Sometimes, not all times, but we can watch for the signs that somebody is not happy in the situation that we're in. And it is challenging when we're in a relationship or there's somebody in our family or somebody in our world constantly being triggered. And I've been there. I've been there when it's like walking on eggshells, you know, because you don't want to upset the apple cart, because then, you know, there's going to be the fight and there's going to be, you know, whatever takes place after that. So it is and can be tough dealing with people who are triggered a lot. And maybe they're not able to engage when they're triggered. So that's a really great point. What can we do? Don't try to work things out when that person's triggered, because a lot of people that get triggered are angry or they're sad and they don't want to talk about it, right? They just want to be. Don't try to work out everything at that point of triggering. And that's why the mesh helps so much, because you're able to let that flow and you can come back and revisit it when maybe both of you are in a good space. Don't try to reason with somebody who's triggered. Don't give them 10 reasons why it shouldn't be triggered. Nobody wants to hear somebody who knows it all, right? Don't point a finger and accuse somebody. I think you're triggered right now. Well, maybe they are. Maybe it would be embarrassing for them to talk about it in that moment. You don't have to point out to other people that they've got something going on and they're not sharing, or maybe they're just one of those that, just stood there like a martyr and just took it all in and didn't deal with it. Don't ignore or dismiss the content of what's being said. So just because you don't talk about it, you don't have to ignore it. You can put it up here to really look at later and examine it. Maybe go down the elevator shaft and figure out, okay, what was that all about? This person said something, just kind of like, Jean, I'm going to go back to you again. They made some comments, they made some racial slurs, or talked about something that was really personal. And so don't ignore that happened. Don't ignore the content or what was said, but do deal with it. That's one of the things that we talked about last week. Absolutely deal with it when you're ready, and when maybe they're ready to hear your thoughts. So how do we deal with somebody who's triggered? Taking space. So you might say, okay, I just really have something I need to take care of right now. And that's not a lie, because you do. You have to take care of this trigger. So find a way to remove yourself from that situation. Now, if it's a really controlling person, this is not as easy as somebody who you're just having a casual conversation with. So somebody that's the narcissist personality, somebody that feels like they have to have control of you, they may not be so easy to say, okay, go, or whatever, but see if you can take that space for you to be alone, to work with it on your own. Create a connection, talk with that person, and calmly, not in an argumentative way, but calmly talk to them, create some connection that lets them know, I hear you. I see you, I hear you, I'm acknowledging you. Now, I just need to go take care of this. And that gives you the opportunity to remove yourself from that situation. We talked about state shifting. Did anybody do some of your homework or understand this more fully after last week? About your state? Do we need to go over state shifting again? We can do that. You're looking for your notes, right? Okay. State shifting. Who remembers any of the tools from state shifting?
Breathe.
Breathe. Qigong. Yoga. Anything else?
Oh, I like to drink a cup of tea, take a bath, soothe yourself.
Right.
Chant or meditate. That's why that meditation at night is so wonderful. It shifts your state.
Yeah. Yeah. Any of those methods, jumping up and down. I love the ones, hop on one foot and talk about what's going on, right? Bring it to mind, but laugh, have some humor. All of those are state shifting. because it takes you out of that rumination about what's going on and being obsessive over it. It just gives you that moment to shift into a way of looking clearly. All right, so that's how you can deal with it. And then how do we prevent it? How do we prevent those triggers in the first place? So reframing them, right? Being more sensitive and using appropriate context. And I'm just thinking of some of the things we've discussed tonight about, some of the things that come up for you. There was the disrespect, one that came up. So how can we reframe that into a way that wouldn't be a trigger? Anybody have any ideas? I would say to do some solar plexus work. I am worthy. I am worthy of respect. I am worthy of having this person talk to me like I've got a brain cell, right? You were the one, was it you or no, it was Jean that brought up that how sometimes it's almost like we're being talked to like we don't know anything. And so go into your solar plexus. I am smart, I am intelligent, I am able to handle conversation and information. And so seeing yourself in a better light than what's being presented to you. That's one way that you can reframe what's going on and say, okay, let me just understand that there's people in the world that will not be honest with us. There's information that's being withheld, but I know that I'm a good person. I know that I'm lovable. I know that I'm intelligent. So I can deal with whatever comes my way. So it's not going into that trigger of, oh, I must be an idiot, right? Because that's how I'm being treated right now. So we can reframe it in a way that makes us feel more empowered and more confident in who we are. Attention to time and place. This is important. Pick your battles and pick the time that you're going to bring up something. This was in relationships, this was one of the hardest things for me because it seemed like the most inappropriate time when the fight was going to happen. And something was going to be said to trigger me, or I would say something to somebody. And then all of a sudden, there you are, out in the open, and all eyes are on you because you've been taken by surprise that all of a sudden you're in an argument in public. So pick your time and your place when you're going to hold a conversation. If there's something that's bothering you and you need to talk to that other person, make sure that it's someplace where you can be calm, where you can not let it escalate into a shouting match or whatever might happen in that conversation. Use sensitivity and empathy. Really put yourself in that other person's shoes. Sometimes that can diffuse that situation of what's going on. Sometimes if I just look at it in a way that you can see why you're upset or what could possibly be making you upset and see that other person, even like with our children, why are they doing this battle? Why are they doing the tug of war and trying to control me? What's going on with that child that they feel like they have to be big and they have to be the one in control? And so putting yourself in their shoes, seeing them from their eyes and the situation from their eyes, sometimes just that little bit of sensitivity will change things around. Nonviolent communication, that's a biggie. Next week, when we talk about relationships, I've got just a very short video by the person who brought nonviolent communication to us. And I want to just have him explain it very clearly when we're talking about relationships and dealing with one-on-one relationships. Inoculation. When you know somebody has a particular trigger, be very sensitive with that. You know, if you know that your significant other is just going to start on a rant and rave about something that's brought up, don't bring it up, or at least don't bring it up in the public environment, or when you're not ready to really deal with it and discuss it and see how you talk about things without it being explosive. Learn about triggers of those who you are close to, and that goes right along with the inoculation. The more you understand what somebody is sensitive about, then you can be more aware of, okay, how can we navigate this relationship without having the explosiveness, without having something that's always there that we have to deal with. All right, I've sped up a little bit because I was just looking at the time and I don't want to keep you all so late tonight. So when you are the trigger, and sometimes we are, sometimes without knowing it, you know, we may say something innocently, but all of a sudden, you know, it's a sore spot with that person. So what do we notice when we're the trigger? What can we be aware of? Just observe, just take a moment. If you see some of the signs we were talking about before, like the red face, you know, something's boiling inside of there, right? Or we see the nonverbal cues that they're uncomfortable, or we see them explode or start to get argumentative or defensive. So again, just putting yourself in their shoes. You know, what happened, what took place to create that, and what did I say? Sometimes we're not even aware of what it was about the conversation that that triggered them, and sometimes it can just be our face, right? The way we're saying things or our expression, if we're smiling, if we're, you know, giving them a look. You know, there are a lot of things that can trigger people in different ways. So pay attention with those that you are in contact with, and, you know, say, oh, maybe I really did do something to trigger them, instead of like Jean's, I must be wrong, I must be at fault. There's sometimes when, you know, we do something and not knowing. So being more aware, being more. All right, so that's social awareness. And then next week, we're going to talk about relationship management and how we can just know more about those relationships and that other person. And, you know, how can we have better relationships, whatever that relationship is? Like I said, it can be a friend, it can be a family member, it can be a spouse or a significant other. How do we handle that in the best way possible and grow from our experiences and our triggering events? So we have about 10 minutes left, and I would just really like to have some feedback, some interactions, some questions or comments. I know I went through that last part really fast, so if there's something you want to be expounded on, let's talk about that.
We're just all shy.
I believe that, Jean.
I am, how can I put this? I'm enjoying this because I think we all know triggers. We all know that we've been triggered, and we all know we've triggered, maybe not intentionally, but we have. I didn't realize how involved this could be, you know. I know that a lot of what we do and say has to do with our background, like you say. And I've spent a lot of years, like 80, trying to lose that, to be honest with you, to lose that. And it's really quite silly when you think about it, when I think about it, because like that first, I'm going to say 10, 15 years of my life should influence all the other years that I've had. You know, we got to learn to let it go so that we can enjoy what life is. Because life is supposed to be joy. And so taking these classes helps you to realize that. It helps you to realize how these things happen and how best to deal with them. So I really appreciate it, Terry, that we go through this. Yeah.
Thank you, Jean. And I know, like I said, next week we're talking about relationships, and I know you've been married to the same person for many years. So
57.
yeah, so I think maybe when we're doing the interactive part next week, there may be some things you could share with us, you know, and learning from and building on what we've already talked about triggers and how to tell if that person's upset or okay, or how do I pick my battles. I think that's going to be a big part of the discussion next week when we talk about relationships. You know, not, like I said, not just spouses or significant others, but you know, many of us have family members that we
Oh, yes.
it can be difficult, you know. So yeah. So thank you, Jean, for your input and nobody here is shy. I know all of you. I know you're not.
Brooke seems shy to me.
So
So do you. You seem very shy, Linda.
To me,
Yeah.
really, I'm a cross between an introvert and an extrovert. And I basically am very, very shy. And it's hard for me to speak up. So I feel like it should be important if I speak up, I guess. But then I'm afraid I'm going to monopolize. So I try to say it real quick. But sometimes, like when, you know, I had part of the interaction today and I feel like I monopolize and I shouldn't talk so much. So I don't know if
Way
that's
I feel.
shyness or what.
Oh, everybody adds to the whole program. So nice to hear what you all have to say, for sure. I wouldn't say I'm shy, but also just want to have something important enough come up to say.
Yeah.
For the most part, I mean, I definitely have my moments of rambling.
The thing about speaking up, especially in a class like this, that's where the understanding comes in. So if there's something that you're driven to talk, then what is that needs to be explained more, or for you in here to have it click? Because, you know, sometimes we can hear something over and over, but until it really sinks in there and that click and that aha happens, then you don't fully get it. And for something like emotional empowerment, you need to get it. You need to understand how to work through those emotions, how to do the digging to get to the basement, to the very core of what's going on. So don't ever feel like it has to be like this monumental thing that you're talking about. It could be just one of the basic things that we're discussing that maybe that hasn't in the puzzle piece that fit in just yet. So everything that you say, all that interaction, it has a purpose. And yeah, I don't see any of you as shy. I know this is a learning environment, and there's a part where I'll be talking and teaching, but there's also this part that's very important, where you're asking questions or you're trying to make it make sense. And so saying it out loud sometimes helps to make it make sense. Okay, anything else?
I do want to add one more thing. We talk about, or I do, because I still need to let go of it, but we talk about narcissists a lot, but I want to say they're attracted to us because we are empaths, which means we care, we like to listen to people, we want to help. People tell us all their troubles, and I think they're attracted to us because we are so loving, and that's one thing they haven't had. So in a way, it's a compliment, but of course, I didn't see it that way at the time. But it's like I'm putting them down, but I want to give them credit that they needed the love too. So that's all.
A lot of times when we act in an aggressive manner, which, most, I don't like to generalize, but when we're talking about people with narcissistic tendencies, there's a lack they're trying to get met. There's something in there that they just are searching for. And like you said, Linda, they see that they see somebody with a compassionate heart. And so that might be what attracts them or what draws them to you. But then they don't know how to stop that controlling energy because they haven't gotten to the basement. They don't know what it is that's there at the core of why they're acting the way they act, or pushing you away and, controlling and manipulating. So yeah, you're absolutely right. When we judge somebody or we criticize somebody, even for how they are in the world and how they're showing up, we need to just stop and give that empathy and see them. What I like to do is see people as their innocent self. So if there's somebody that, what I call our sandpaper people, somebody that's just really irritating and frustrating, and you just want to remove yourself from being in the same room with them. I've tried this many times now, and it always works. I try seeing them as a baby, sometimes just a newborn baby where nothing yet has been imprinted. And I see that heart, and I look at the heart, and then I look at the heart of Jesus, and that heart that's just shining love and shining light out. And so I envision them with that same heart, just shining love, and it shifts things. It really does shift it. And I know it goes back to the teaching of when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. It's not that the person has changed. They still may be the biggest narcissist in the world, but the situation, the energy has changed because I changed. I changed the way I viewed them. So hopefully that'll help if you're dealing with any of those sandpaper people. They're everywhere.
I know.
There's more and more of them in our environment. So any tips and tricks that we can use to deal with that and to help us to be more peaceful and not start to just send back any energy other than love to them, then that's what I want to do. I want to just stay in the place of love and be as non-judgmental and as happy and loving as I can be to everyone, and not pick and choose who I'm going to share that with. So hopefully that'll help. That's Terry's tip. My last tip for the day. Go to their immaculate heart. It's pure love. Okay, well, look at that. You're getting out of here on time tonight. I'm so happy that you are here. And for those of you who missed tonight's class, you'll be getting this replay. If you have questions, If you have anything at all that you want to share, just reach out. And we'll see you back next week for the conclusion of emotional
Aw.
empowerment. I know every time we get to that last class, everybody's like, can we do more? We'll see. We'll see what happens from here. I love you all so
Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank
much.
you.
A wonderful
you all.
Christmas holiday coming up this
Everybody.
Yes.
Yes, sending you lots of love for you.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Christmas.
Before we meet again. All right.
Well, Christmas morning,
Christmas morning, we'll be together on Zoom. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, come
we're
in your
going to do
day.
pajama party.
Yeah, just come casual or dress up, whatever your heart desires. And I will see you then. I love you so much.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.